Hey guys, it's Shara from Woodshop Diaries, and in a recent video, I shared how I built a corner base cabinet with bifold doors. In that video, I mentioned that there are several different types and styles of corner cabinet, so in this video, I'm showing you another one, a blind corner cabinet. Now, if you're not familiar with what a blind corner cabinet is, basically, this is it. Essentially, it's just a wide cabinet box where another cabinet will just butt up against it right here. Now, one of the things about a blind corner cabinet is that due to the nature of how it is made, this section is not really super easy to access. But in this video, I'm going to show you how I added some drawers to utilize some of this hard to reach space. Obviously, the drawers are totally optional. I'll show you how I added them, but if you just want to see how this cabinet came together, let's go ahead, dive in, and get building. Building a blind corner base cabinet is very similar to building a regular base cabinet box, but with a few added features. If you haven't already seen my base cabinet building video, I recommend checking it out because it's got a ton of general cabinet building information that also applies here. Just like with my other cabinets, I started out this one by cutting down my plywood sheet. I used 3/4 inch birch plywood for the cabinet box, and I've included the full cut diagram and cut list in the printable plans that I've linked below. From my sheet, I cut 2 side panels, a bottom, and 3 support strips. Now, I could absolutely cut toe kicks out of both side panels, but because one of the side panels will be going into the corner, only one of them really needs a toe kick. So I measured, marked, and cut the toe kick from the bottom front corner of my right side panel only. Then I drilled pocket holes to assemble the cabinet box. I needed pocket holes in both ends of the bottom panel and the support strips, but I also needed to drill pocket holes along the front edge of the side panel with the toe kick and along the front edge of the bottom panel where the door will be going. I know that's a lot, but pocket hole placement is noted in detail in the printable plans. Then I assembled the cabinet box like a basic base cabinet using pocket hole screws. Now, here's one of the main differences between a typical base cabinet and a blind corner cabinet. One half of the front of a blind corner cabinet is covered. So when a blind corner cabinet is installed, another cabinet butts up to it. There are usually some filler strips involved in order to allow the doors and drawers to function properly, so this side of the blind cabinet needs to be covered so that nothing can fall into this dead space and be lost forever. In my case, the left side of the cabinet is the one that needs to be covered, but they could go in either orientation depending on your layout. All of that said, just be sure to install this cover piece on the side that you need it to be for your application. On that note, let's discuss cabinet size for just a second. Blind corner cabinets are not all one specific size, but they are usually fairly wide because this part of the cabinet will be covered by the joining cabinets, which are typically about 24 inches deep. The exposed part of the cabinet can vary as needed, but if you make it too narrow, it's going to be difficult to get into. So you do have some flexibility, just remember to keep it practical. Now, I needed to build a face frame for the other side of the front of the cabinet. For this, since I was painting, I just used some pre-primed pine. I cut 1x2s for the top, bottom, and one side of the face frame, but for the other side, I cut a piece of 1x4. I'll share why in just a second. I assembled this face frame using pocket holes and screws. Once the face frame was assembled, I drilled pocket holes into the top support of the cabinet where it will be going. Then I glued and screwed this frame onto the cabinet, making sure that the 1x4 was towards the center. Okay, so why did I put a 1x4 here? When blind corner cabinets are installed, usually they're not pushed all the way into the corner. Typically, they're pulled from the wall so that there's a bit of space here in the back. Depending on the placement and the spacing of your adjacent cabinets, this blind corner cabinet may need to adjust a little when being installed. This extra thick face frame just allows some wiggle room for installation, but also ensures plenty of room for the door, once installed, to open. It's always nice to have some wiggle room where the cabinets meet at a corner because you just never really know how you'll need to adjust. So blind corner cabinets have a ton of different options as far as how you utilize the space inside. There are tons of different blind corner cabinet contraptions that you can install into here. I'm not personally going to buy one because they're quite expensive and I'm just going to make my own. But for a very, very simple blind cabinet storage option, you can literally just add a shelf in here just like you would with any other type of cabinet. You can drill shelf pin holes on this side and then on the inside of the other side panel and put a shelf in here. It'd be a little bit difficult to reach in and grab stuff, but definitely still accessible, just not maybe the most convenient option. You can customize your cabinet 1,001, probably more than that, different ways. I plan to add 3 drawers to the cabinet, and first I needed to add some framing to mount the slides to. I ran a piece vertically at the back of the cabinet first, then I added 2 pieces flush to the opening of the face frame. These 2 pieces will give me somewhere to mount the slides for the first drawer. Then I added 2 more strips across the back. The bottom piece just needs to be taller than the strip that I just added, and the next strip can be placed however far apart that you'd like your drawers to be spaced. I feel like this will make a little bit more sense once the slides are installed, so just bear with me. Once the framing was in for the slides, I installed them. 2 slides go on the back 2 braces, and I installed these 2.5 inches from the edge of the vertical piece. Then I flipped this over and installed 2 slides at the same locations, again 2.5 inches in from the cabinet opening. And last, I added a pair of slides into the cabinet opening. Now I needed to build the drawers. I've covered how I build drawer boxes in a separate video, so I won't go into detail here, but I assembled my drawer boxes using 3/4 inch plywood for the sides and 1/4 inch plywood for the bottom. I cut dados to install the drawer bottoms and assembled the boxes using wood screws. Now, normally I assemble my drawer boxes using pocket holes and screws because the drawer front will cover the pocket holes. But in this case, I'm not adding drawer fronts, so I used wood screws instead. They're still visible, but they're not as big or obvious as pocket holes would have been. I applied edge banding to the edges that will be exposed on the drawers. Of course, that's optional, but it just looks a little cleaner. Then I installed the drawers. I found it easiest in this case to separate the sections of the slide and mount the drawer part directly to the drawer box on each side. Since I had installed these 2.5 inches inset from the opening, I installed the slides onto the box 2.5 inches from the front of the drawer box. I used this little Craig multi-mark to help me with my spacing. That way, when I install the drawer into the cabinet, the box comes out just to the opening. Then I installed the final drawer into the front. If you wanted, you could add another drawer just like this, kind of like a drawer shelf here as well. So you could pull them both out and then pull these out. I'm planning on putting things in these drawers that I won't be accessing very often. And then for this shelf drawer thing, I plan to use this for like dog food. And it's a pretty big bag. So I don't really have room in here for another shelf if I'm gonna put dog food here. Or you can just buy one of those very expensive blind cabinet kit things with the swingy out contraptions. million ways to do this. This will work for what I'm gonna use it for and will save me quite literally hundreds of dollars just using this instead of buying one of those contraptions. Now the cabinet was pretty much finished except for a few pieces. For the back panel, I cut a piece of 1/4-inch plywood to cover the cabinet and stapled it in place. Then I assembled a simple shaker style door to cover the opening. Now I won't go into detail on building doors because I've covered that in a previous video where I showed 7 ways to build them. For this project, I used method number 4 from that video. Once the door was built, I painted it and the face frame of the cabinet. Alright, so I've got my door painted and my face frame is painted, but now it's time to hang the door and I need to make sure that I get my hinges placed where they're not going to interfere with the drawer. Okay, so my hinge needs to go on the face frame so that it's above this drawer slide. That still allows this drawer to go in and out, but that's a little higher on the door than I probably normally would have placed it. So I'm gonna measure. So the bottom part of this hinge needs to be at least 5.5 inches from the edge, like the bottom edge of the door. Just to give me a little wiggle room, I'm gonna center it about 6.5 inches from the bottom of the door, and that way when it gets installed on here, it should be just a little bit above this drawer slide. I measured and drilled out my bottom hinge cup hole centered about 6.5 inches up from the bottom edge of the door. But I placed the top hinge just where I usually do, which is about 4 inches from the edge. Then I installed the hinges to the door and the door to the cabinet. I actually need to add a piece of toe kick support along the bottom. I should have done that earlier, but I wasn't really thinking. It's not absolutely necessary, but the problem is that I'll run a toe kick piece across here and then I'll have another cabinet that comes out this way and I won't have anything in the corner here to be able to nail that toe kick into. Why is everybody in the way? Everybody is in the way. Why don't y'all go play? Go outside and play. I know, big stretch. Okay. I'm just gonna run a piece of scrap plywood, like a strip, between the two side panels underneath, so that way I can nail my toe kick onto it once it's installed and I get to the point where I'm installing the toe kicks. This piece could have, and maybe should have, been installed earlier in the project, but it's fine to add it at the end too. Basically, this strip just gives me somewhere to nail the toe kick piece to at the corner once the cabinets are installed. And with that, this cabinet is complete. This will be going into my walk-in pantry, so if you want to see it installed, be sure to subscribe to the channel and stay tuned. I'll be sharing more pantry updates once I begin installing the cabinets in there very soon. If you're curious about building other types of cabinets, I'll link some videos to check out in the description below that you might find helpful. In the meantime, I hope you guys enjoyed seeing this project come together, and I hope it gave you some ideas to apply to your own projects. Thanks so much for watching, friends, and until next time, happy building!